Hello and welcome back to the second season of Gratefully You. I'm your host, Tasha Simon, and I am so glad you're here. This space is where we explore all things that are sacred, the messy aspects of life, and all that we're becoming. Where we talk about those real life moments, the kind that stretches us, that slows us down, or even wakes something up inside of us. It's those moments we meet with curiosity, presence, and compassion. If you've been with me since season 1, I want to welcome you back. And if this is your first time tuning in, you are right on time because this one's different. Today we're talking about something that doesn't always get honored in our go, go, go culture. Rest, stillness, the in-between. Oh man, it's very rare that we hear folks talking about that. Yes, we hear of it from a perspective of wellness practices, but what I'm looking at is a spiritual assignment. This episode is called The Sacred Pause When Rest is the Assignment. And it came out of a season I definitely did not expect. It was the longest pause I did not plan. And really a truth that I had to live before I could really speak to it, So I have to just lean into it. If you've been feeling a little unclear lately, if you've been wondering why everything feels so slow or quiet or just off rhythm, maybe you felt that way too. That strange tug between movement and stillness, where everything around you says it's time to go, but something deep within you says, not quite yet. Simmer down, child. Simmer down. It's time that we got to wait, And here you are just left wondering, is this the usual procrastination? Is this resistance? Or am I really that tired where I need to really rest? Or is this delay? You don't have to answer that question now out loud. I just want you to notice as we talk throughout today, what rises within you. Maybe there's a part of you that's been waiting just to breathe a little deeper, to pause without shame, and really to just be there in the moment, not to perform, but just to be. That little essence that you're experiencing, I want you to welcome it here today, the moment you feel it. Because I'm telling you, I get it. I've lived this. I've breathed this. It's been very, very intimate with me. And see, when I launched season 2 on my birthday last month, I had a plan. It was all ready to go. I was like, okay, I'm going to release a couple episodes. I'm excited about it. There was so much of a high that I was experiencing because I had hit 1 year with Gratefully You. It was my birthday. And really just looking back over the whole year and seeing how far I've come, even with the ebbs and flows, right? But almost immediately after I released that episode, something shifted. My husband's grandmother got sick, and eventually she transitioned over to the heavens because she was a beautiful, beautiful soul. It hit us pretty hard, my husband especially, so I had to hold sacred space for him. But also, she was such a beautiful soul that I feel really honored to be able to experience her as a grandmother. She treated me like her own, the type of conversations we had. I'm just so grateful for her. And with that, though, because it was unexpected, all that rhythm that I had thought I had or was stepping into just dissipated. Grief entered the space where momentum was trying to get started. It shifted my timeline. And it rearranged the way I hear God. See, Paris's grandmother was a pastor. And one of the first interactions I had with her, I just remember feeling the presence of God within her. She spoke to aspects of my heart that I didn't even present to her, but she spoke to it within me at a very young age, not even knowing that I had a mother wound at the time, and other wounds, right? And so I had to sit with that, and just like I was thinking about all that she's taught me just by her existence. And so I'm sitting in that instead of creation mode, which is where I was just at, right? And so I'm like, okay, she's spoken over myself and over my husband on how we create together. She told me one of the last times I talked to her, she said, Tosh, your voice is a gift. Keep speaking. You and your husband need to come forward and speak more together. And that message was just like stuck in my head for a while after she transitioned, right? So the way I was thinking of the plan that I had made, it's shifting. I had to pause and just be in the presence. And if you listen to my last episode of season 1, Grief, You Sneaky Little Bastard, you know some of my journey with grief and how I look at it as a gift. Grief is a gift. Is it painful? Absolutely. And I understood that, yes, even then I needed to surrender to grief. But to be honest, just because I understood the process, understood the gift that grief can be, doesn't mean that her transition hurt any less. Didn't mean that I wanted to honor it. I was frustrated again, because grief doesn't always feel sacred in that moment. It feels like silence, like delay, like everything is breaking within you when you thought you were about to bloom. But you know what? Loss will do that. It will ask you who you are without the roles, without the rhythm, without the record button on. And if you let it, grief becomes that sacred soil of our becoming. And you see, it wasn't just that though. Every time I tried to sit down to record this episode, something would happen. It's literally laughable. The house would get loud. Cars outside my window would just hit on the exhaust and be exceptionally loud, annoyingly loud. I was so frustrated. It was as if like every time I would go hit record, I'm like, oh, okay, God, what are we doing? I thought you said go, and then back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I'd feel a wave of resistance that I just couldn't quite name. And yeah, I was frustrated because I wanted to be consistent. I wanted to show up as a podcaster who kept her promise to show up. But Spirit kept whispering, even this is a part of the message. Maybe the interruptions weren't just noise. They were mirrors, showing me where I still rushed, where I still tried to perform, where I hadn't fully made peace with not delivering. Because that's the thing about sacred pauses. They don't just slow your schedule. They start to reveal what you believe about your worth when you're not producing. See, I didn't realize it right away, but what I was experiencing was a sacred pause again. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about how this kind of revved up over the last 6 months, but I had to start here because I was like, God, I thought we were through this. I was ready to go. And I had to add this experience into the mix because I needed you guys to know this is raw. This is what's going on. This was that sacred pause again, not as a one-time moment, but as a rhythm I was being called to live into. The kind of pause that doesn't come to disrupt your purpose, but it purifies it. It realigns it. It slows you down enough to return from truth, not tension. So, if you've been in your own pause, planned or unplanned, I want you to hear me. You might not be lost. You might just be in your sacred pause. And that is a very, very different thing. Maybe you felt this too. Not just the pause, but the tug of war inside it. That question of, am I still who I said I was if I'm not doing the things that I was doing right now? Or even that quiet fear, will they still see me if I disappear for a while? If so, I want to tell you, you are not alone in this questioning. You're not the only one holding your breath between who you were and who you're becoming. See, this space is not empty. It's truly sacred. This isn't a full end of a sentence. This is literally walking between the edges of words where God breathes through the silence and says, wait, something holy is growing here. See, to be honest, I didn't plan on ending season 1 when I did. That last episode came through a very, very clear direction. But to tell you the complete, honest truth, as much as I want to show up authentic and be present, it was rough. I had so much resistance in sharing my journey with grief. Yes, I processed a lot prior to, but to really share it publicly was a different story. I remember thinking, who's going to want to hear this? Grief is messy. It's heavy. It's not something that you can just translate with ease into a soundbite. It's not a gift that you wrap up with a bow and say, here you go. It's not that. It's raw. And I felt so vulnerable, but I couldn't shake that nudge to share it. I knew I had to come forward, so I followed it. And once I released, I felt this strange mix of relief and silence. Again, see, this is when it first started, that sacred pause. See, I thought it was just going to be a short pause after that, some time to kind of rest and regroup. But the silence just kept stretching and stretching and stretching. I was like, all right, God, what are we doing? What are we doing? I had no new downloads, no new thoughts, no new inspiration, no spark. It was just stillness. And as the days turned into weeks, I started questioning it again. Like, what am I missing? Should I be creating something? There's got to be something. Is it time to move yet? But every single time I sat down to plan or push, I felt that same whisper, not yet. And I, being me, tried to override it because that's my nature, right? We've been conditioned to do that. If you don't push, you're lazy. That's not true. I have to keep going, stay visible, be productive. But see, that's not what this season was asking of me. This had nothing to do with force, and there was no clarity to chase. It was just space. And so eventually, after through deep prayer and like, okay, God, come on, consistent asking that question, what is there that you need me to do? I realized that this wasn't avoidance. It wasn't procrastination. You know, my dear friend, I always say that procrastination, or had an intimate relationship of avoiding coming forward, right? It wasn't that. So I definitely inspected it deeply. Like what within me is preventing this, right? But this was sacred. So I just allowed it to be. And the crazy thing is, right in the middle of the silence, of the stillness, when I officially stopped trying to force a message or produce or sit down and record, even planning, I literally stopped everything. Right before the holiday season, December, I received an invitation, literally out of nowhere. I was offered a ticket to go to a podcasting event in Orlando. I had no plan, no agenda, no expectation. Like I wasn't looking for it. It just randomly popped up. I was like, okay, God, am I supposed to go to this? This is kind of cool. I was like, oh, let me talk to my husband about it, see what's his thoughts, because obviously it was just around the holiday. It could cause, traveling across the country. What is that going to look like? It's going to cost something, although the ticket's free, right? And so he was like, yeah, I think you should do it. But even still, after I got his confirmation, you should do it, right? I started thinking Tosh, you haven't even been in creation mode. You haven't been recording. What are you going to do at this event, right? And I remember thinking, why am I going to a podcasting event if I'm not even podcasting right now? What could I possibly bring to the table? Do I even belong there? I know it sounds so simple now, but in that moment, it surfaced some real deep questions about identity and worth, especially in the season of rest. Because the truth is, I hadn't fully claimed the title podcaster. I mean, sure, I had recorded a couple episodes, a season even, poured my heart out into the mic, and created something with God, with spirit, with the universe to come forward to help others. But something about being in pause had me wondering, does it even still count? And maybe you've been there. In that strange middle space where you've started something, felt called to something, but haven't really fully claimed it. Maybe you're a writer who hasn't published quite yet, or a healer who's really focusing on your own healing and not coming forward and supporting the collective, right? Or an artist whose creativity has gone silent or quiet too. A leader without a clear title. A soul who knows they're becoming but doesn't know what to name it quite yet. And maybe you've been wondering too, am I still allowed to call myself this if I'm not producing right now? Let me tell you what I had to tell myself. Yes. Yes, you can. You don't need to be in full motion to be in full purpose. You don't need output to validate your identity. Sometimes the pause is where you actually claim it. See, that invitation at PodFest cracked something open within me because I've been to plenty of conferences over the years, most of them tied to my career, my resume, my professional life. But this one was different. This wasn't about my job. This was about my voice, my truth, my becoming. This was personal. It was sacred. This was me saying yes to something that had come from alignment, not obligation. And then I realized maybe I wasn't going there to do anything. Maybe I was going there to remember something I didn't even know I had forgotten. And well, what unfolded next? It started before I even got on the plane to go to PodFest. I was in meditation and I was completely caught off guard. I kept seeing an image, not in words, but more so in presence. It was a bear, strong, still, majestic. It was walking through a field, not rushing, not proving, just being a bear. And at the time, I didn't fully understand it, but that image kept returning. And I remember thinking, God, a bear? Because I've always resonated with lions. So to see a bear come forward, I was like, what is this about? Why do I keep seeing this? But I knew it wasn't random. This was something that God was trying to show me. And what's strange is days later, as I aborted my flight, The very first woman that I sat next to, she began to pour her heart out with me, and she shared her story where she was moving to Orlando because she lost her husband, meaning he transitioned, and she was stepping into a new era of her life. And how we talked about how grief transformed her, reshaped her, and that she really experienced true love. And so that conversation went deep, and I had like a glimpse thought like, is that why I wasn't supposed to keep recording? Because she needed to hear about grief, my episode? I didn't say anything right away, but I was like, this is really interesting that we're talking about this. And then she pulled open her phone because she's a photographer. She does it for fun. It's one of her trades. And she is phenomenal at it. And one of the first pictures she showed me was a beautiful, raw, alive, gorgeous bear and its cub walking through the wild. Immediately I smirked, like, God, really? This is so funny. That's usually how things happen for me, where these signs present themselves. I'm like, that's funny. Because instantly I remembered that meditation, the bear, that stillness, the knowing that the bear didn't need to perform, it just was. That message was so loud, but yet so gentle. I knew that it wasn't a coincidence. And usually in that environment, I would be like, I really wanted to ask her for the picture, but I was kind of nervous. Like, it's kind of weird. I just met her, asking for her to share her picture. But I heard a nudge, like, you need to ask her for it. So I did. And without hesitation, she said, absolutely. And later on, I looked at it again, and I started to see myself within that image of the bear, the mother, the guide, the protector, the wanderer. And of course, I saw my kids. I thought about how often I lead quietly and fiercely, even when the path isn't clear. And I thought about how bears carry spirituality. They're not loud by default. They're curious. They're fun. They don't chase relevance. They honor cycles. And this bear was a sign of my inner totem of spiritual power, a guide into the wilderness of the soul. That was the moment I stopped questioning the stillness. I wasn't on a break. I was in hibernation. Not to disappear, but to be held, to heal. God wasn't holding me back. He was holding me in. And everything started to make sense. See, when I arrived to Podfest, I didn't have a plan. There's no presentation. I wasn't presenting. There's no content. I didn't even know what I was walking into fully. This was my very first podcasting event. I just knew I was supposed to be there. So like the bear walking through the wilderness, that was me. Just exploring. I knew I was supposed to be there, and almost immediately I started meeting people who felt familiar, like on a soul level. Every conversation felt orchestrated. I wasn't chasing a connection. It was just meeting me, one by one. I remember getting on an elevator after having dinner with a group of folks that I met there. I was by myself, and I walk in, and a lady comes into the elevator, and I greet her. She said, "Wow, do you sing?" I was like, "Girl, in the shower." I don't sing publicly anymore, right? But to know that I was in the car bursting my heart out with some songs, she was like, "Wow, worship is all over you," and proceeded to give me a message that she heard from God. And there were several things that she shared with me that was like in alignment with what was going on for me, standing in my power, knowing that my voice matters. The fact that she can hear song in my voice, and I do sing privately, but that I need to sing more. She saw me in the first sound of my tone. That's crazy, right? To the average person, that's like, what just happened? And that's just one example. I had so many of those moments while there. I even randomly ran into these 3 girls that we ended up connecting so deeply. Like, we stayed up late at night, way past the conference, and just chatted. And they are so familiar, to the point that we still communicate every other week. We make sure to get on a scheduled call and just check in with each other and see how things are going. And I was just like, wow. One of those girls in that group said, I sensed a peace with you before you even spoke. And I was like, even when I was just in awe with what God was showing me, because even when I'm not sure what to even say, my spirit speaks, and they feel the presence of God with me, the lady in the elevator, of the girls that I met and just hung out with. My presence matters. That event was less about learning something new, but more so about remembering what I already knew deep down inside, but had buried it with so much noise. I'm already enough, and what I carry is sacred. And most importantly, rest doesn't disqualify you. It prepares you. So I'm going to tell you, you are enough. And everything about you, your presence, your words, they matter. And when you're tired, take the time to rest. Even when you're not tired, just know that your soul is guiding you and preparing you for your next. What I found through Podfest was like, I really felt God saying this was never about production. It was all about positioning. I think about the girls that I met, and I had been wanting community in the podcasting space, and I found it. We talk about that. We talk about life. We talk about a lot of things, right? I've been praying for that kind of community, not just the support, so to speak, but the resonance. People who felt spirit-led, grounded, and real. And there they were. They weren't just found in strategy, networking, so to speak, but through surrender. See, you've heard me say a few times in this episode about becoming. And I want to sit this with you or go through that with you, because what does that really mean? Becoming doesn't mean turning into someone new. It means returning to who you've always been underneath the noise, the roles, and those performances that you are doing. Becoming isn't about climbing towards worth. It's about remembering it. That's what I uncovered through those experiences at Podfest. It's what happens when you stop chasing and start listening. When you stop trying to prove and start choosing presence. Becoming isn't a final form. What you've heard through today is it's about rhythm. That quiet unfolding of truth that's always been yours. See, and once I surrendered to the pause, I started seeing it everywhere. After I left and was just really on a high from that event, I was like, wow, God, you are amazing. And what's wild is once I surrendered to the pause, I started seeing it everywhere. It wasn't just personal, it was universal. This rhythm of stepping back to be recentered, it's written into so many spiritual paths. In Judaism, there's the Sabbath, a holy interruption, not just a day off, but a return to breath, to God, and to self. In Christianity, Jesus would often withdraw to quiet places, not to run away, but to commune, to realign with his source. He didn't apologize for the pause, he modeled it. In Islam, the daily call to prayer is a sacred rhythm, a pause to remember what matters, to return again and again to the divine. In Buddhism, silence isn't a void, it's a space. The stillness between thoughts become the very place where awakening begins. And then I think of the indigenous traditions across the globe. There's retreats, vision quests, cycles of hibernation. They've always been honored. Stillness was never a sign of weakness. It was a rite of becoming. So no, it isn't just about getting rest. It's about remembering who you are when you're not performing. It's about reconnecting to your inner compass before the world told you to go faster, to do more, to be louder. We're not just tired from schedules. We're tired from the dis-ease of the collective, from that constant noise, unspoken belief that if we stop, we fall behind or fall apart. And that's not divine wisdom. That's conditioning. So when we pause, when we say no to the chaos and say yes to the still small voice within us, we're not just healing ourselves. We're reclaiming our spiritual sovereignty. We're remembering that we are not just here to survive this moment. We're here to shape it. And when we do that, not through force, but through resonance, it reminds me of the message that Gandhi left us. He said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." See, that change doesn't always begin with activism. Sometimes it begins with alignment, with choosing to sit still long enough to remember who we are and to radiate that truth from the inside out. Because truth, when lived, is contagious. Stillness, when reclaimed, becomes power. So let's pause together. Let this be more than just something you're listening to. Let it be something that you're entering into. Take a breath deep through your nose and slowly exhale. Again, inhale what is true and exhale what's heavy. Now ask yourself gently, where is your soul asking for stillness, but your schedule keeps saying no? What part of you feels so tired, but unseen? Where have you been mistaking movement for meaning? What fear or story from the outside world has been pulling you out of your truth? And here's the deeper question underneath it all. What would it feel like to stop outsourcing your power and come home to the you that already knows? Don't rush the answer. Just breathe. let it rise, and let that be enough. So in closing, you made it to the pause, not just the end of this episode, but the moment where everything slows down enough to remember. So wherever this met you, whether you're in a season of quiet or wrestling with the noise, or simply just realizing how tired you've been, I want to say this again clearly and without condition. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are becoming. And becoming doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like pulling back, turning inward, and letting the soil of your soul breathe again. You're allowed to stop striving, to rest without expectation or explanation. You are allowed to reclaim your rhythm. It's not waiting on your hustle. It's waiting on your surrender. This sacred pause is where transformation takes root. And when you emerge, it won't be by force. It'll be because you are ready. So as you move through your week, I want to invite you to listen a little more closely. Notice where life is asking you to slow down, where you've been pouring way too much, too fast, and too often. And ask yourself, can I step back? Not in defeat, but in devotion to my own becoming. Because when you live from your center, when you move from the stillness, you don't just change your life. You shift rooms. You shift the atmosphere. You become the quiet revolution that we all need. And that right there is sacred. If this episode met you, if it gave you language for something your soul's been whispering, I love for you to let it ripple. Share it with someone you love and someone that you think is great. Someone who's been carrying a lot quietly. Someone who may not even realize they're in a sacred pause of their own. Help give them language to what they're experiencing. And if you want to work together on whatever's rising in your life, whether it be personally, professionally, or spiritually, you can visit gratefullyou.com to learn more about how you can work with me. You are not becoming alone. We are in this together. And if today's pause stirred something in you that you really want to lean into a little bit more, I've created a bonus episode to help you anchor it in. It's just a quiet space to return to when you need to breathe, ground, and remember. So keep an eye out for it. And if today's pause stirred something inside of you that you really want to return to and really anchor it in, I've created a bonus episode of affirmations to help guide you through that when you need to breathe, to ground and remember. Because like I said, there's a rhythm to it. There's cycles to this, right? There's moments of going and there's moment of pause. And sometimes we need to be reminded of what the moment is, right? To really be present in it. So that should be coming out soon. So keep an eye out. And after that, we'll step into something that I know many of us wrestle with. And I've titled this episode, The Sacred Tension. How do you rest without dropping what matters? How do you stay rooted in your truth while still showing up for the people around you and the many of responsibilities calling on you to carry? See, that's where we're headed next, because rest is not always about retreat. Sometimes it's balance, sometimes it's boundaries, and sometimes it's learning to breathe inside the demands without losing sight of yourself within them. So say with me, we're going deep this season, and thankfully, it'll be together. So until then, may your breath be your compass, may your pause be your teacher, and may your surrender make peace for what's next to rise. And may you remember, even in the stillness, the silence, and in your slow seasons, you are becoming. So be great, be full, and most importantly, be you. Be blessed, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for joining the Gratefully You podcast. To stay connected with the Gratefully You family, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And even better, invite someone that you love and that you think is great to listen in with you. And if you ever need a reminder of how great you are, grab yourself or someone you love the Gratefully You memorabilia from our website at gratefully.you.com. Until next time, friends, lots of love your way. Be great and take care.